like
This
behind.
Yeah,
conference
no,
will
I mean,
now
I
be
don't live
recorded.
downtown, so I'm a little bit sheltered from it.
Where do you
But-
where do you let me make you the presenter if you want to.
Yeah. That sounds good. Yeah, I'm kind of like northwest of downtown Portland, so there's
Oh,
kind of
okay.
like a big hill. So downtown Portland's pretty like flat on either side of the river, and then there's like a hill that goes over it, and I just live on the other side of that hill. So let's see.
Just so we know too, did you get the presenter thing?
Yes. Okay.
So welcome everybody, we're ready to go. And the star of our show this week is going to be Alex. And I'll tell you the context actually, which was what I'm trying to do is basically, I'll let her explain the specific program, but what I believe is going to happen is pretty much every of the owners that heard this wants to do the same thing. And so it's a really good, it's a basic program in the sense that it's kind of three-dimensional direct mailing, but it's a very well thought out campaign. And I particularly want Alex to talk a little bit about how she personalized the whole thing, which I think was the magic kind of secret sauce to the whole thing. But she'll go into the program, but I do had talked to her the owner of the company, which is Doug, and he's like thrilled by the outcome. You know, he's had at least 3 meetings that he's literally texted me about. Not all like immediate sales or anything like that, but you know, somebody who is incredibly well networked still found like 5 really good opportunities with people he never knew existed before, right? And this guy is like really networked. So it's a really good program. I would give you like one resource that I will text you all about, or I can email you all about. It's a book called How to Get a Meeting with Anybody. And it's by a guy named Stu Henneke. You can kind of get the audio version, but that's kind of the Bible of doing three-dimensional direct mail. And he's one of the leading lights in the whole thing, if you just want some background on it. But with that, I will turn it over to our friend Alex.
Awesome.
Just let me introduce 2 people that are here for the first, actually, yeah.
Sure.
So a woman coming in, Dina Rissman, is, I don't know if I see Henry here. Yeah, Dina is with a client that I'm doing. It's Dina, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Why don't you just introduce yourself so I don't butcher it?
Dina Rissman. I'm with Ace IT Solutions, and I do marketing communications for them. I helped them start the company like 11 years ago, and you know, we've been kind of growing and going since then. I work completely remotely. I'm in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, so that's me.
And Ace IT is about, remind me the revenue, 6 million or so?
6, yeah.
Yeah, 6 or so, 6 million. They're in both New York City and kind of northern New Jersey. And they specialize particularly in the financial services industry too. So Dina's going to be one of her, and there's a gentleman there named Derek Burnham. You want to tell us a little about your company there, Derek?
Let me unmute here. Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, everybody. I work with DCNC. We're a managed service provider, obviously, in Denver, and we let's see, we're probably just under 4 million in revenue. I am the vice president of sales and marketing. Stephanie is our marketing director. She can't make this meeting today. She's got a conflict on Wednesdays that she's working on getting out of potentially, but she does most of the heavy lifting for this stuff for us. But without her being there, I'll definitely be checked more in, and we're hoping to learn from you guys. We've been growing steadily we've been in business for, I think, 22 years now. I've been with the company for 10 of those. Things have been going great for us. COVID hasn't really slowed us down much, but we definitely want to continue our growth. And sales and marketing is relatively new for us. We pretty much grew organically over those 20 years, and just the last 2 that we've started focusing on any real marketing and sales. So we're here to learn all we can and help where we can.
Yeah, and remind the size of your company too. I remember you're being 4-ish, 5-ish, 6-ish.
The size of my company? We're 23.
3 million. Okay, and then you concentrate mainly with law firms, correct?
That's right. Yeah, we focus primarily, probably 80% of our clientele are legal. So that's kind of our vertical and our niche right now. We're looking to jump outside of that as much as we can, pick up a couple more, but that is our specialty for sure.
Yeah. So Alex, you want to take it away?
Yeah, I'll take it away. And sorry, I just turned the lights on in here, so hopefully you can see me a little bit better.
We
I
can see you
realized I
fine.
was sitting in the dark. So yeah, so my name's Alex. I'm the communications manager at Portland Internetworks. For those of you that don't know me, I think most of you do at this point. So we're an MSP based out of Portland. We have 33 people here on staff. And we, just like all of you, I'm sure, are trying to recalibrate our marketing a little bit based on this new environment that we're working with. So I will say that traditionally we do kind of stick to more traditional marketing methods. So we're pretty, in a normal world, we're pretty heavy on our events and outreach just through like networking events and things like that. So we're not, we definitely do some digital marketing, but I would not say that that's usually where we have seen a lot of our results from. So we definitely lean into those traditional methods. Obviously, COVID has complicated that a little bit because we're not really throwing a bunch of parties at our office right now. We currently only have 10 people working in the office at one time, and obviously we're not inviting any of our customers or anything like that out into the world outside of their houses at this point. So we have taken quite a few of our events virtual, and I think that in the beginning we got a pretty good turnout, and then we saw a little bit of a lull. So we kind of got thinking about how we could be reaching out to new people that are not just on our list of regular attendees, and how we might be able to break through all of the like clutter that's online right now, since that's where everyone is going to do everything at this point. So Doug and I kind of got thinking, and we've actually been wanting to do a direct mail campaign for a while, but we haven't really put all the effort into fleshing out all the details or anything like that. And we figured that since nobody is really doing any sort of direct mail marketing right now, it might be a good opportunity for us to reach out to people, and definitely would break through the noise since there's a little bit less noise coming through those channels. So that's where we came up with this idea. It's our first direct mail campaign we've ever done. So we definitely learned quite a bit on the way. And this is actually our last week of the campaign. So it is still in flight, but I think that we've gotten a lot of details worked out. So get right into it, maybe. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about our target audience for this campaign. So our ideal customer for fully managed IT is between 25 and 150 employees. 150 is actually a little bit high for us. I would say 25 to 100 is kind of our sweet spot. So those are the businesses that we are marketing to primarily. We are kind of looking for some co-managed opportunities as well. So we're kind of stretching those boundaries on the top end. And then we do work with some smaller companies as well, just doing some project work. So we're kind of, our sweet spot is 25 to 150, but we're kind of on the fringes looking for any kind of opportunity we might be able to grab at this point. So small and mid-sized businesses, and specifically with this campaign, we're targeting businesses that are actually in proximity to our office. So we took basically like a 4-block radius of the office and started stalking companies that were in that area. And you'll see sort of why we decided to do that in a minute when I get to the messaging piece. But we just figured we already had some like built-in commonality with those people because of the fact that we're all located in the same like district of Portland. So we figured we would just take that and build on it. And then because we are, you know, ultimately we are trying to get fully managed opportunities, we're targeting the finance and operations leaders in these companies. As I mentioned, there are a few that are a little bit larger that have actual IT people. So we have reached out to those people in that case to hopefully drum up some project business or some co-managed opportunities there. But I would say like 90% are finance and operations leaders that are going to have some degree of influence in the IT purchasing decisions, but maybe are not the IT person themselves. So, I mean, this is, you know, you're all marketing people. This is pretty much why we do all marketing. We're trying to make connections, generate leads and referrals, and boost brand awareness. So I won't go too far into that because I think you guys probably get that. So this is just a rough outline of what the campaign looks like. So it is a 5-week campaign. So it's a series of 3 direct mail packages, and then some little digital follow-up and direct follow-up mixed in there as well. So week 1 is our first direct mail campaign package, and then we've got week 2, a second direct mail campaign package. It's different, obviously, than the first one. We follow up on LinkedIn. You'll notice that we skip to week 4 and we don't have anything in week 3. That's intentional. We did notice as we were kind of starting to get ramped up that we kind of needed an extra week to be able to take care of some housekeeping stuff in the middle of the campaign, whether it was waiting for people to respond to our messages on LinkedIn, or having to reroute packages for people that were not in their office. So we kind of put a little bye week, if you will, in there to give ourselves a chance to catch up. And then we've got some direct outreach on week 4, email and a phone call. And then week 5 is the final direct mail package. I'll go through this stuff a little bit more too. So as I mentioned, this is a 5-week campaign. We're targeting our neighboring businesses that are sort of in that rough head count and in the industries that we want to be working in. We don't necessarily specialize in any particular vertical. We do have quite a few architecture clients, but we kind of take logos of all varieties. The only thing that we try to steer clear of for us personally is like high compliance types of places. So like medical practices and dental and things like that. We just find that it's not really our forte. So we're not going to be reaching out to any of those people, obviously. We've got total 40 prospects on our list, and we've got 10 that are added into the campaign each week. So I'll explain that a little bit more on the next slide. Have a hard time explaining that, I think. And we're using direct mail, direct marketing, and digital marketing to connect with these people. We had a pretty like loosey-goosey budget at first, honestly, because this was the first time we had done that, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't trying to be too cheap with it to get through to people. So we actually ended up spending about $3,000. So it ended up being about $75 per company. I think we actually ended up at about $2,700, so a little bit less than that. So this is the timeline. This is kind of what I was talking about introducing 10 new companies into the campaign each week. So basically on week 1, we took the first 10 lists or the first 10 names on our list and sent them the package number 1. Week 2, that first group gets package number 2, and then group 2 gets package number 1. So it's sort of this dynamic thing where we're adding 10 new people and doing lots of different things every week. Obviously, when we got to like these weeks right here, things were very busy because we've got lots of people in lots of different places in this campaign. But part of the reason why we do that is because of the fact that we'd never done this before, so we wanted to be able to be a little bit more flexible and make changes if we saw that things weren't working along the way. And then as well, you know, we're a small company, we've got 2 marketing people, and Rainey, who's our marketing coordinator, is doing the majority of the execution of this. So I want to be cognizant of her time and make sure she's not spending like 4 weeks straight just putting boxes together, because we've obviously got other things we're working on too. So
I asked you a question, Alex, and you can tell me that you're going to answer it later, but if I looked in, now that I see how you did this, so if you go to your previous slide, at what point was there any pattern in terms of that cadence that you did where it took, like, did people respond when you sent out the first thing, or did they respond after you sent the second thing? You see any patterns in that? I was just curious.
They definitely responded to our LinkedIn invitation. 100% of people that we have gotten responses from have been from our LinkedIn follow-up in
Which was
week 2.
step 2, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll start getting into the steps now. So just real quickly, like I said, I literally just like, this is not super refined the way that I came up with these names. I literally just like clicked on our office on Google Maps and zoomed in really far and started looking up companies on LinkedIn and Google. LinkedIn Sales Navigator was where I used a majority of, or where I got a majority of the information on these companies and the targets at the companies. And it was really, really useful. And then, you know, I mentioned that LinkedIn was where we've gotten all of our responses from. So it was good to know that all those contacts actually had a LinkedIn profile for me to be able to try to reach out to them. And then, you know, even less refined, a little bit guerrilla, we literally drove around to see who had cars in their parking lots so we could see who was in the office. So is that superficial? No, but was it effective? Yeah, I'd say so.
That's funny.
Alex?
Yeah.
Alex, these are, so all 40 of these businesses you had never called or emailed to or contacted in any way prior
Correct.
to this?
Yeah,
Okay.
completely cold.
Okay.
You know, and as Doug started to talk to these people and as we started to connect with them on LinkedIn, we realized that we had lots of things, like lots of mutual connections with these people, but we never actually reached out to these companies or these contacts at all. That was actually something that was a little bit, we had to make a decision in the beginning because we actually do business with quite a few of our neighbors anyway. So we had kind of toyed with the idea of doing sort of a variation of this campaign where we're reaching, like reconnecting with people, but we just decided for the purposes of simplicity, we're just going to go with people that we've never met before. So yeah, this is our first package. So this is the one that goes out during week 1. And basically the gist of it is that it's a virtual coffee meeting kit. So we've got a bag of Portland roasting coffee, which is just up the street. So that's another place that people are going to be familiar with if they're in our neighborhood. And then we've got this nice little like insulated ceramic tumbler that's pretty nice. And then we've got these mailers. And the gist of this is just like, hey neighbor, I'm Doug. We like to connect with people. And then we did customize each one of these based on the things that we determined that we had in common with these people. I'll talk about that more in a second. So we talk about the things that we've got in common, and let's get introduced. Normally we'd love to have you over for coffee, but obviously we can't do that right now. So here's everything that you need for a virtual coffee introduction. The call to action on this one is to email Doug. Nobody did that, but we kind of purposely changed up. We had a different call to action intentionally at every step of this campaign because, as I mentioned, this was the first time we'd ever done it. So we wanted to see what was most effective, and we found out that like having people reach out to us was not very effective. I kind of didn't think it would be, but that's why we made it the first one. So anyway, I'll go into the customization piece. So this is an example of one of the actual inserts that goes inside this package. So as I mentioned, it says, hey neighbor, I'm Doug, CEO of Portland Internetworks. One thing I'll mention as well is that all of this communication is coming from Doug rather than, I mean, not actual Doug, but Alex and Rainey as Doug, rather than it coming from the company. We just found that it was easier to find mutual connections and things like that way. So this part right here where it says we have some things in common, those are the things that vary based on the recipient. So in the example, like in this example, we're both B Corps, like both this company or both our company and the company that we're trying to reach out to are B Corps, and Doug has this person in common with them. So we've got some things in common, so let's get introduced. Most of the info that I found was using LinkedIn. I did also do some looking around on local business journal lists and stuff that I knew that we were on. So I already know like all the things that we belong to and all the like all the awards that we've gotten recently. So I just like pulled up those lists and started looking for other people's names on them. And then people like to brag about themselves too. So you can usually find stuff like that on their website. And then just membership directories as well. So like I said, I know what organizations we're a part of. So I just looked for other people's names on those.
Can we just pause here? Because this is the magics. This is the secret sauce, actually. Because this is the things that show that you've done some work to find out what you have in common, right? Second of all, there's nothing promotional here, right? There's nothing about the fact that you even do IT, right?
Right.
Right. So the intent truly is to make contact. And then what I found in these things in the past when we've done it, it's the person in all aspects of surgical prospecting. It's the things you did to personalize it make a very big difference.
Yeah, we want to, I mean, because of the fact that we have determined at this point that people are not getting a lot of mail, we definitely want to make sure that we're capitalizing on their attention and proving why they would want to talk to us when maybe they never call anybody back that sends them a bag of coffee before. Another thing I'll mention, I'll go back to this a little bit. So I kind of mentioned that we were trying some different calls to action. We also did like different packaging on every single one of these boxes as well to try to get people's attention. So this box, we ordered blue boxes because we didn't want it to like we wanted it to stand out if somebody, you know, isn't in the office or is only in the office 2 days a week and the receptionist sees this package. We want it to grab their attention enough that they'll tell somebody that they have a package there. And then we went into week 2.
And did you
And-
send two of these? So you had 2 people before. Did you send just 1 per company, or did you send 1 to each
Yeah, so we only have 1 contact per company.
per company? Okay.
Um,
And who was it? It was either whom? I saw that in your previous one.
It was either like if there was an operations person, it was most likely that person. But in the
Okay.
case of some of the smaller companies that are like 20 people or so, they maybe don't have both finance and operations people. So in that
Okay.
case, I would send it to the CFO
So
or
you send it to one or the other. Okay.
yeah. So that we wouldn't send it to both people. We would just send it to whichever persona seemed most appropriate. So, and that's another thing that's great about LinkedIn is usually people that are like a little bit higher up at companies tend to have their profiles a little bit more filled in, so you can actually see
Yeah,
whether or not they're responsible for technology. So
Yeah.
LinkedIn was like for sure the best tool. It saved me so much time. Anyway, so that was week 1. Week 2, we've got a couple things going on. So these boxes are going out on Tuesdays. So the second Tuesday of the campaign, we'll send out this one that basically the gist is like, coffee's not your jam, let's meet for tea instead. And then we've got some local tea and locally made jam as well. No personalization on this piece at all, because we came out pretty hot with that personalization to begin with. So there was no tweaks that needed to be made in order to individualize these boxes, which made it a little bit easier for production. These boxes are a different size. They're also white, so that if somebody walks in and sees that they have a stack of blue boxes on their desk, they're not like alarmed and think they have a stalker. So we're kind of trying to like, we wanted to come out of the gate strong, but then we also wanted to be subtle enough that people are not like, oh my God, you guys need to back off. So we used UPS to ship these packages. So Rainey was double checking to make sure like when they were arriving at people's offices. And then once we've confirmed that the company has received the package, we'll follow up the following day with a request to connect on LinkedIn. And those requests are coming from Doug. So, yeah, and the call to action here is for people to reach out to Doug on LinkedIn. Again, nobody did that. I will say that we did individualize the LinkedIn connection requests with whatever we determined they had in common during the week 1 portion. So for example, the message is something along the lines that I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's something along the lines of
corporation and
we don't, you know, I don't think we've met before, but we have, you know, we seem to know a few of the same people, or we support the same organization, or like, you know, whatever insert thing you have in common here. We love to get to know, you know, business leaders in the neighborhood, so would love to get better acquainted. And people have responded well to that, which is good. As I mentioned, week 3 turned into a little bit of a bye week. As we got rolling, we realized we needed some time in the middle to sort of get things more organized so that we were still able to execute them in a like clean and organized way, because things were just getting a little wild. So we decided pretty early on that we were going to make this a bye week. And so we're not going to reach out to the prospect at all during this week unless we need to resend them a package that maybe was not delivered during week 1 or 2. And then prep for the week 4 contacts, which are email and phone calls. So we need to get that information all lined up. Yeah, so week 4 is just direct follow-up. So we call and email them directly. So basically the gist of this is just to follow up on the packages that we know that at least their company has received at this point. We don't necessarily know that the prospect has received it, but we know it's at least made it into their building. So, you know, we just say something along the lines of, you know, we've been trying to connect with you, you know, hopefully you've enjoyed your coffee and tea. Like we're actually like acknowledging the things that we sent them. And then what we want them to do here is to RSVP to our next virtual happy hour. So the point of this is to get them to come to one of our events so that they can see what we're about in sort of a like non-intimidating way, because it's just a big virtual happy hour. They're lots of fun. And it's not like you have to commit to a 1 hour one-on-one conversation with somebody on WebEx. So someone that's maybe a little bit less, taking less one-on-one meetings, perhaps, like I've talked about, some of the IT folks that did end up on our list, they would be more likely to go to a virtual happy hour than they would be to actually sit down and have a discovery meeting with Doug. So yeah, that was what week 4 was. And I'll mention the emails came from Doug. And I just emailed them through Outlook. For those of you that don't know, I also have a little side hustle as Doug's assistant. So I already have access to all of his accounts and everything like that. So it makes it easy for me to kind of control things behind the scenes. So I can actually just send emails on behalf of him through Outlook. I just log into his LinkedIn profile and, talk to people and send requests and things like that. Obviously, you might need to, depending on like your different organizations and the comfortability of your owners and things like that, you might need to set up a little bit more process in place. But because of the fact that I already had those permissions, it was just easy for me to just go in and do it because I already was going into those accounts for other reasons anyway. So, and this is the final mail piece. So this is week 5. This is actually just like an actual like marketing mailer. We did send it in an envelope so it doesn't look like something that somebody's immediately going to throw away. But basically the gist of it is like, here's the scoop. And then it actually does talk about what we do as a company. So we've got this little outline here that gives you the like quote unquote scoop on us. And then we've also got a little ice cream gift card in there. So we're really leaning, like, if you haven't been on our website, I'll spare you the details and let you know we're pretty quirky over here. So we're really leaning into that like cheesiness. If you haven't noticed with the like, coffee's not your jam, let's send you some jam. Like, here's the scoop, here's an ice cream gift card thing. So this goes into actually talking about, who we are as a business. The way that we generally tend to focus our messaging is like, sell yourself, sell the company, sell the solution. So that's really the process that we're trying to follow here. And we're not even getting to the solution with this campaign because, once we've got people responding to us, we know that that conversation comes a lot more naturally. And we're not having to sacrifice our authenticity or our brand or anything like that by trying to pitch that too early in the game. So yeah, this just talks a little bit about us. So we make technology a piece of ice cream cake. We do every flavor of IT services, things like that. So that's the final piece of this campaign.
Hey, ask one question. What's a certified B corporation? I'm not familiar with it.
So it's a like social and environmental certification. So there's a pretty big community of B Corps here in Portland. So we actually have the most B Corps per capita of like any city in the US. So it's a certification that we have, and part of being a B Corp is doing business with other B Corps because the idea is that you're spending your money with companies that are aligned with you in values. So we are definitely targeting those people.
Who certifies you is one? I'm just curious.
So there's a company called B Labs. It's a pretty hefty process that we had to go through. So yeah, it's a company that's called B Lab, and that's basically what they do is certify people to become B Corps. So you have to recertify every 3 years. There's like 200 questions you have to verify you're actually doing things correctly. You have to get a better score every 3 years. So that's another one of my responsibilities here is managing that certification in our community initiatives. It's a pretty hefty thing, and we're pretty proud of it. But that's the thing with other B Corps as well, is they also have gone through that process and they've also worked really hard. So they're really like interested in doing business with other people that have gone through the work to make sure that they're actually achieving their goals in those respects. So yeah. So now we're at, like, the first time I gave this presentation, we were kind of like in the middle of the campaign, but now this is the last week of it. So we've reached out to all 40 prospects. We've sent 40 LinkedIn invitations. As of this morning, I sent the last batch of LinkedIn invites, so I would not necessarily say that we've gotten any responses from that. We've gotten 8 people accept our connection requests. And then we've actually had 3 people that we've met with and had discovery meetings. So we've had 3 FTAs so far. We have some scheduling conversations ongoing with some other people in LinkedIn of these like 8 connection requests, excuse me, but we haven't actually nailed anything down on the calendar yet. So
did anybody, did Doug call anybody in this process, or this is all digital?
no, Doug did not call anybody.
Interesting.
I mean, because Doug's also our, Michael, Doug's our business development person.
Yeah.
So when we have an FTA, Doug's the one that meets with them. But prior to that, Doug didn't call anyone. Part of using his LinkedIn though is that he was responding to a majority of the messages as people were messaging him back, because he's spending more time on his own LinkedIn profile than I am. So he sees those messages come in and responds to them accordingly. But
so I had a question. This is Henry from South Tech. I know Doug actually very well, so this is really cool to see kind of behind the scenes on what you guys are doing. But I had a question. So you had 8 accepted connection requests. So how did it turn from an accepted connection request to an FTA? Are you kind of having conversations about their IT and what you guys do? Like that, I guess following up on what Michael asked about phone call, it seems like there's no phone call. So is all of this conversation happening over LinkedIn, and that's how you scheduled the FTA?
yeah, basically. So in our initial connection request, we're obviously sending a message. We're not just like sending a request to connect with no context. So people are messaging us back and saying, hey, thanks for the coffee. Like things are tough right now. So, can't meet for another month or so. Or they're messaging us back and saying, hey, thanks for the coffee. I'd love to meet. Like, let's schedule some time. And then we'll get their email and then take the conversation into email format and send out invites and that kind of thing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. It seems like the conversation is happening over LinkedIn, so that kind of answers it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, 100% of people that have responded to us have responded on LinkedIn. So not a single person has called it. Like Rainey, that has been actually making the phone calls to follow up with people. She's not talked to a single real person. She's only talked to people's voicemails. No one has reached out to Doug via email like we were initially asking them to, unless it was a response to his LinkedIn message that he had asked to take onto email versus LinkedIn. So LinkedIn was a very, very pivotal part of this process for us, for sure.
Sorry, another question. At what point in the process did you do the LinkedIn request? Is that week 1, week 2?
It's week 2. So week 2, we send the package on a Tuesday, and then it generally works out that we're sending the connection request on a Friday.
Okay, I see that. Okay.
I think the other thing I would point out in this, and it's actually triggering similar programs like this that I've experienced in the past, is when it says FTA, that doesn't necessarily mean you're even talking about becoming their MSP provider or anything.
Right.
What it really is what kind of business relationship, how can I help you basically, and how can you help me? So sometimes they're not even like direct business conversations. So like, for example, I just was checking my texts that I got from Doug, and one of them was a guy who could introduce Doug to 3 architecture firms that he wanted to get in front of, right? And I don't know the other 2 off the top of my head, but it's not necessarily, it's kind of the beginning of the business development process. It's actually not the culmination of it in a sense.
Right. Yeah, and I would I would also say one of the like happy side effects, there were certainly things that we needed to figure out, which I'll talk about in a second here. But one of the happy side effects of this is a lot of the people that we have been reaching out to are involved in other organizations that maybe we're not involved with or we are involved with. So they have a vested interest to meet with us too, because they want us to they want our membership basically. So Doug's finding as he's going into these conversations, talking about like the business and referrals and that sort of thing is coming really naturally because they're kind of doing the same thing to us. And we respect it. I mean, obviously we're the ones that are putting all this effort to get them to talk to us. And so if they do talk to us, we're willing to hear what they have to say. So yeah, so as I mentioned, we have that like.
Could I ask you a question? Did you ever get any bad feedback at all?
No, not yet. I
That's
mean,
what I was, yeah.
we'll see. I think that people probably would just ignore us if they didn't like what we were doing. But I mean, that was kind
When you
of,
said you got 8 out of 40, that's you, but you're kind of staggered, right? Are you in phase 2 with all 40 now?
yes, yeah, we are at this point.
So you got all 40, okay.
So one thing that I hadn't really considered, this is not on my lessons learned slide, but it is something that has come up quite a few times, is that people are not on LinkedIn as often as I am, generally, I think. So with some people, we are getting a response. You know, if I send it on a Friday, we'll have a response on Monday or Tuesday when they log in and check, you know, what's happened over the weekend or that sort of thing. But especially because of the fact that we're actually located in a pretty industrial part of Portland. So there's lots of like family businesses there that are like manufacturing or food distribution or things like that. And those people don't really necessarily, like their clients aren't spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, so they're not spending a lot of time on LinkedIn. So we'll sometimes go like a month before someone will actually respond to our LinkedIn request. It's very like, there's no sort of like average time frame, I would say, with respect to the actual like response rate that we get, if that makes sense. Like it really varies, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. So we probably will still get responses from people months after we're done with this campaign, hopefully. That's the idea.
That's interesting.
But yeah, so things that we've learned so far, I'm sure there's a lot more than I could add to this list, but the things that were the most prevalent is our timing was a little bit aggressive given that people aren't in the office 100% of the time probably. So that's why we added that week 3 to sort of give us an opportunity to catch up in the middle, because I mean, I think it is kind of honestly a pretty aggressively timed campaign in general, but especially given what we're working with here and how many people we've got to execute it. So we definitely, when we continue to adapt this campaign for different audiences and our messaging and things like that, I definitely think that we will need to have an extra week in there somewhere in order to like keep the train on the track. So another thing that I didn't really expect, because I was having such an easy time finding people on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, I just thought it was gonna be really easy to get their email addresses. And so you guys are probably like, oh my God, what a rookie. But we actually have not done any like volume prospecting before this. So I had to learn the hard way that people generally don't want to advertise their email addresses. So we did end up actually purchasing a tool to get that information. And it's been pretty helpful.
What did you get,
100% of email addresses that way.
what tool did you buy, Alex?
Oh gosh, what is it called? AeroLead, I believe, or UpLead. UpLead, that's what it is. We looked at AeroLead or AeroLeads and UpLead was like the most intuitive, so that was the one we went with. It wasn't necessarily scientific, I would say. Yeah, and you know, I've talked about this tons and tons already, but LinkedIn connections were a pivotal step. We actually kind of added that one in at the last moment because we're like, well, we already have all this information from them on LinkedIn. We might as well reach out to them and see what they say. We didn't actually think we were going to get a return on that, but that's where we've gotten all of our responses. So I think that knowing that that is a pivotal step, we will continue to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator to find the connections because we need to be able to have that opportunity to connect with them. And without using, you know, Sales Navigator, we have a higher likelihood of getting someone who does not have a LinkedIn profile. And that's another thing too, is we are kind of missing a segment of our audience for companies that maybe don't have a LinkedIn presence. But this campaign is focused on that. So as we start to refine our process, we'll figure out how to drill down on those people that are not on LinkedIn. But right now, we've been pretty successful with the people that are, so we're going to keep focusing on that. Another thing too is we definitely should have created a play in advance for when people respond to us, because when we're seeing people respond during like week 3 or 4 of the campaign, obviously that changes the trajectory of it. So we didn't think about that for some reason in advance. We didn't actually think we were going to get this many people responding, and we thought we were kind of just going to be able to play it by ear. But with the volume of people responding, and because of the fact that we've got so many moving parts to this campaign, we really should have had that planned out in advance. So we do have a plan now, and we definitely will have that planned out next time.
So you mean that's what you're referring to there was when people responded, kind of Doug just kind of freelanced? Is that what you mean by that? Or is
Yeah,
is that
and
anybody
as
play?
well, am I done sharing my screen? Did that go away?
It went away. Do you want it back?
No, I'm good. That was
Okay.
it, just like questions. Yeah, so when people are responding to Doug on LinkedIn, first of all, who's responding to those messages? Naturally, it was just Doug because they're popping up and he sees them and he's a pretty social person, so wants to talk to them.
Yeah.
But we really should have thought about that. And then as well, like how does it, when they're having this FTA scheduling conversation, how does that change the trajectory of the rest of the campaign? So for example, if Doug's already having a conversation with them on LinkedIn, then I'm not going to have Rainey call them and say we've been trying to reach out to you because they're already having that conversation. So we should have had that figured out. And then, you know, one thing that we are doing now that we hadn't thought about is after Doug has the FTA, we're sending them another package. So assuming that they don't get to week 5 of the campaign, it's basically like a gist of, or a little play on that. Where instead of saying like, here's the scoop on us, the messaging is like, thanks for giving us the scoop on you. And then it goes into like some different information. So.
And just out of curiosity, can I ask you a couple questions? Actually, a couple lessons learned I would add on there. But do you have a plan for the 32 that didn't respond?
Nope, that's another thing we should have done.
I was going to say that's the other thing to think about because there is some investment in that, right? So it might just be that they could have been out of town for 3 weeks, right? I was going to say for your lessons learned too, it's because I've done tons of these things, but the things that are very clever about what you did was, number one, it wasn't overly promotional, right?
Yeah.
And then
Hey, Alex?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it's just 2 other quick things. 2 is that personalization step is vital. Like without the personalization step, it just seems like a generic direct mail, right? Yeah. And I think 3 is the little card that you used was very kind of short to the point and kind of clean, right? It wasn't, you know, it wasn't, like I said, not overly promotional, right? So it didn't take the person a lot of effort to pick it up and read it. But I'm sorry, Don, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to know what the wording was for the LinkedIn invitation.
I can send that to you if that would help. I mean, I could pull it up right now, but basically the gist of it is like, hey, so-and-so, I don't think we personally met before, but you know, we're just right up the street from XYZ company. We have these, it seems like we know a lot of the same people, or, you know, it seems like we both know this person or we both support this company. So I would love to, you know, get better acquainted with you, basically is the gist of it, but I can send you the for real.
Okay, yeah, so there was no reference to the fact that you've been sending them boxes of goodies or anything like that?
No, and I will say that I never before this campaign have thought about the fact that there's a character limit for the messages that you can send in a LinkedIn request. Mike Sheila's just like laughing over there. So initially when I wrote the first draft of this like message template, there was a reference to it, but I ended up just taking it out. So because I needed to have, it was more important to me to reference the things that we had in common and keep it in Doug's actual like voice than reference that we'd been reaching out to them.
I have a couple good workarounds for you on that, Alex. Ping me afterwards. We'll set up some time
Yes,
to go over.
Please. Yeah, I will say actually, like for someone who did not spend very much time learning LinkedIn Sales Navigator before we did this, and this was the first time we'd ever signed up for it, I found it to be really intuitive, actually. I'm sure there's so many more aspects of the tool that we're not yet harnessing, but it was really actually easy for me to figure out how to do. And another thing I'll say too is, you know, a lot of the personalization aspect of this does rely on the fact that we do have things in common with these people. And I would say probably 80% of the people, Doug had a mutual connection, or we belong to the same organization, or, you know, we were on the same list or whatever. But, you know, there is a 20% that we literally didn't have anything in common with. And in that case, in those little like spots on the, you know, week 1 mailer where we're talking about the things we have in common, we did have some like just boilerplate things like we're both neighbors and we're both small business leaders. So we're kind of fudging those a little bit. Like those are not really things we have in common with them, or maybe they're not as strong as others, but still worked in some cases. So that was good. The point I was actually trying to make with that though is that, 80% is pretty good for having things in common with the people on our list. And I think that probably, Michael mentioned Doug's pretty well connected. I imagine that, you all or your owners or your business development people are also pretty well connected. So I think that you'll find that you have a lot more in common with these people than you would think. It was actually pretty easy for me to find things we had in common with them, or to determine we didn't have anything in common with them.
Yeah, I was going to say the other very innovative thing was when I've done these mostly in the past, there would be a calling program attached to it, but actually in a lot of ways, the LinkedIn thing is actually even better.
Yeah.
Because it's just another form of low engagement that they can engage with you.
Right.
And
yeah,
then,
and it makes it easier for me to find information on them.
Yeah.
Because they're already advertising it, so I don't have to dig as much. So.
And even though you did it for neighbors, like I was saying, that's one thing I enjoyed about this one, because I've done a lot of them in the past, but I've always done it by industry, right? So you could think of it, sending it to like your architect clients that you don't have, or law firm clients that you don't have, but you want to get, right? But
yeah.
Or, business owners in a particular association or something like that. So the trick is what's the community aspect of the people you're targeting, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing is, because I think we've had pretty good success with this. So we are going to do like later iterations of this.
Yeah.
And really, there's not a whole lot that has to change other than the, lessons that we learned.
Yeah.
Versus like, rather than, hey neighbor, we need to change the messaging of the first thing. But other than that, it's pretty like.
I have this thing I call the 6 pillars, and I always have a hard time describing what surgical prospecting is, but this is surgical prospecting. It's personalized, small group kind of personalized outreach.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to ask, I just don't know. I assume too that the coffee that you sent and the tea that you sent were actually pretty nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And all those companies are actually located in our district.
Yeah. So you're not sending like, pictures of clowns or anything like that, right? It's that, but I mean, some people do that in 3-dimensional direct mail. They send
and that's kind of something that was really where I saw that we had the opportunity to stand out is, as Rainey and I were kind of selecting what was going to go into these different packages, I was assuming that nobody was going to respond to us. Obviously, I hoped that would not be the case, but you kind of try to like plan for the worst, right? So I was like, worst case scenario, we send somebody a box, they get the box, they never actually talk to us, but they drink the coffee and they have this mug that's not something that's just going to go into a Goodwill box after 6 months of sitting on their desk or whatever, but something that they're actually going to be grabbing for and using and finding value in, or finding interesting enough that they think about it every once in a while, and when they do, they remember that they got it from us. So that was the worst case scenario. And there are going to be people that never talk to us. We're not going to get 100% return on this, unfortunately. But yeah, that was kind of the idea.
Just out of curiosity, what kinds of companies were the FTAs with? Do you know the nature, like what business they're in?
Yeah, so it's been kind of all over the place, honestly. So there's some like urban development groups, which are like architecture construction firms, which is totally like right in our wheelhouse since we've got several architecture clients. We also really tried to focus on like the food distribution, like companies that are actually we're not gonna focus on restaurants right now. That's gonna be kind of like salt in the wound to them, and it's not really that much of a productive conversation for us. So we tried to think of companies that were thriving right now. So probably marketing companies are doing pretty well. And, like I said, food distribution is a pretty big thing in our little like belt of the Central East Side Industrial District. So we focused on those companies. And we've actually, of the 3 FTAs we've had, I think 2 of them have been urban planning. One of them
Interesting.
has
Yeah.
been like a meat company, which is actually kind of weird that we almost have 3 meat company clients now, which is a little bit of a weird specialization, especially considering Doug doesn't eat meat. But
I was gonna say, did you say meat, M-E-A-T? Okay, meat
yeah,
company.
like literally like bacon and pork chops and stuff.
Real meat.
We're almost specialized in like meat packing facilities. But yeah, I wouldn't say that there's like a particular vertical of, for people that have responded to us, but those were the ones that we tried to focus on. So yeah.
Has anybody else done 3-dimensional direct mail, stuff like that? With any success?
We've done postcards, direct mail, but not like gifts yet.
Same for us.
I've seen this work a lot, like even in the corporate world, like getting meetings with people that own $100 million companies, right? So it's like it's a technique that's there's a little bit of art to it that Alex went into, but it's something you can look into. I'll send you all the link to that book too.
We've
done similar campaigns. Ours wasn't 3 gifts that we would send. We'd just send 1. So it'd be a multi-touch, multi-cadence campaign that we would start with a box mailer. So we would have like a South Tech decorated box, and then we actually bought a bunch of Turbis cups that had the South Tech logo, similar to what you guys did, and we would send that with coffee and say, hey, let's have coffee. And then we would follow that up with a LinkedIn request, follow up with a call, email. I think it was like 2 or 3 calls, and then 2 or 3 emails within that campaign. So it was probably about 8 touches within a 3-week period. So it was over 3 weeks, and we had some mixed results with that. We did get some good results out of it, but we did a lot more per week. So it wasn't as tailored specifically to the business. So I think some of the things that you guys did with the more specific to their business and talking about your connections together and really deep diving into it and maybe doing less, I think might be better for us moving forward for our future campaigns. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, like as I said, I felt overwhelmed. We had to add an extra week in there just with the amount of touches that we had. So kudos to you for getting that many in a 3-week period. I don't think we could have done that.
We didn't ever go through with this, but we talked about sending a really nice radio controlled car to the person that we wanted to meet with, and then telling them that if they agreed to the presentation, they'd get the remote control.
That's a pretty common one.
But we didn't do it.
Has anyone done that same sort of thing in the past? I got a thing in the mail from Barracuda offering free AirPods if we just took the meeting. We take the meeting, listen to their meeting, and free AirPods just for doing that. I'm wondering if anyone's done that or had any success with doing that sort of thing. Seems pretty expensive, but maybe if you were targeting specific people that you wanted.
No, it's the second thing there.
Yeah, well, I guess another thing with that too is, other than, obviously the investment of your time to target these people, you haven't actually purchased anything for them until after they've already met with you. So that's good.
Yeah, that's true.
You have less of an upfront investment, I suppose.
That's fair.
Yeah, because that's one thing is like we have like 200 ceramic mugs now. So it was a little bit of an upfront investment for sure, but
we've been running a campaign throughout Q4, and it's only specific to certain industries, but we're doing a promotional giveaway, but it's more like a raffle rather than meet with us and you get this. It's kind of like an entry, but it's $1,000 giveaway to a resort in Montana. And we've gotten a couple meetings out of that, just discovery, and then they've turned into FTAs. So we've seen quite a few meetings come from that, which was exciting.
Yeah, I want that.
Everybody needs it.
The other thing that Katie's doing too is, and I just noticed it because I talk to her and her salespeople each week, is they will make calls, and then a certain relatively small number of times they'll actually send out physical letters. And in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I'm thinking, Katie, that there was at least 2 meetings that I can think of off the top of my head, or 3 that literally came out of the letter. People actually,
Yeah, there was 3 meetings that came out of that so far that we've tied back to the mailers directly. And so we're doing like 3-week sprints where we have our sales team call, email, call, email, call, email, and then I follow up with a mass. They create a group of contacts that they'd really like to get some content out in front of, just in case they're not actually reading their emails or listening to voicemails. So we send them a physical mailer with an infographic card. And we've had 3 people either email back or call back into the office saying, hey, I received your mailer, we're interested, let's talk. So it's been really cool.
so I'd encourage people to think about, I may actually get somebody that's a couple of direct mailer SMEs that we could have on this too. Talk about different methods of mailing and, you know, what works, what are the trade-offs and all that stuff. But everything I hear in the direct marketing business is mailing is back.
I will say I had my reservations, but we've seen returns, so I would second that.
Yeah, I definitely was not, like I said, I did not have high hopes for this, but it has worked out pretty well.
Oh, yeah. No, very, very well done. First of all, thank you for doing this for all of us, Alex. I appreciate that, and putting the time and care in the presentation. I will post this recording, and then if you don't mind, do you mind either emailing me the presentation or putting it in our Teams group? Yeah, either way, I'll put it in for it, you know.
Yeah, I'll put it in Teams, that way everybody can see it if they need it. Yeah, and I mean, I'll say it's been a pretty good, like we've had pretty good results so far, especially considering our low expectations. But this is the first time we've done it. We're not experts. There's still a lot of things that we had to like iron out and learn. And it all seems very like official when it's in a PowerPoint, but we stumbled a little bit with it too. Full transparency.
You're a good marketer. You packaged it up so it looked awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. Well done.
All right, guys, it's our 1 o'clock time, so I will thank you all for this. I will get you send you the recording link in case anybody wants to re-listen to it and think about if you have interest in doing something similar like this. Just so you know, those of you that are in STP, we're going to challenge all of your owners to think about how to do the same thing for one group. So if they take the challenge up, you know, you can do the same great things Alex is doing. Hopefully that's fun for you. All right, well, thanks, and we're back again 2 weeks from now, and this will be our cycle. I'll check to make sure all falls and holidays in case we have to move it, but we'll just do it every other week if that's okay with everybody. All right, thank you all.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Shut it off up here, right?